What if everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization was wrong? What if, buried beneath the hills of southern Turkey, there was a monument so ancient it predates the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000 years? A structure built before humans invented writing, before we learned to farm, before we even had cities. Welcome to Göbekli Tepe, the archaeological discovery that's rewriting human history. Picture this. It's 1994, and a Kurdish shepherd named Savak Yildiz is walking across a dusty hillside in southeastern Turkey, near the Syrian border. He notices something strange poking out of the ground. It looks like a large stone, but it's too perfectly shaped to be natural. The stone has a strange rectangular top, almost like a giant letter T. He reports it to local authorities, and soon archaeologists arrive. What they uncover will shake the foundations of everything we thought we understood about our ancient past. Göbekli Tepe, which means potbelly hill in Turkish, is not just old, it's impossibly old. The site dates back to around 9,600 BCE. To put that in perspective, when the builders of Göbekli Tepe were carving their massive stone pillars, the last ice age had just ended. Woolly mammoths still roamed parts of the earth. Stonehenge wouldn't be built for another 6,000 years. The Great Pyramids of Giza wouldn't be built for another 7,000 years. Writing wouldn't be invented for another 6,000 years. This wasn't just before Egypt. This was before civilization itself, or at least what we thought civilization looked like. For over a century, archaeologists believed they understood how human societies developed. The story went like this. First, humans learned to farm. Agriculture allowed people to settle in one place instead of wandering as hunter-gatherers. Permanent settlements grew into villages, then towns, then cities. With surplus food came specialization. Some people became craftsmen, others became priests, others became rulers. And only then, only after all of this, did humans have the time and resources to build monuments and temples. This was the established theory, taught in universities around the world and printed in countless textbooks. Göbekli Tepe turned it completely upside down. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were hunter-gatherers. They didn't farm. They didn't have permanent settlements. They didn't have metal tools or wheels or written language. And yet somehow, they organized enough labor to quarry massive limestone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, and arrange them in precise circular patterns. To understand how impressive this is, imagine moving a school bus made entirely of stone using only your hands, ropes made from plant fibers and wooden poles. They carved elaborate animal reliefs into these pillars, depicting lions, bulls, foxes, snakes, spiders, scorpions, and vultures. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. These weren't primitive scratchings. These were sophisticated artistic works that required skill, planning, and cooperation on a scale we never imagined possible for pre-agricultural societies. How did they do it? We're still not entirely sure. The quarries are located about 100 meters from the main site, on a limestone plateau. Without wheels or draft animals, the builders would have needed hundreds of workers to transport each pillar. They would have needed to feed and house these workers, possibly for months at a time. They would have needed to coordinate their efforts over years, maybe decades. Some archaeologists estimate that it took 500 people working together to move just one pillar. All of this suggests a level of social organization that, according to our old theories, simply shouldn't have existed yet. Klaus Schmidt, the German archaeologist who led the excavation from 1995 until his death in 2014, proposed a revolutionary idea. Maybe we had the story backwards. Maybe it wasn't agriculture that led to temples. Maybe it was temples that led to agriculture. Think about it. If you wanted to build a massive monument, you'd need to gather lots of people in one place for extended periods. You'd need to feed them. Hunting and gathering might work for small nomadic bands, but not for a construction workforce of several hundred. The need to feed the builders might have forced humans to start experimenting with growing their own food. Interestingly, some of the earliest evidence of wheat domestication comes from this very region. Religion, not hunger, might have sparked the agricultural revolution. This idea is still debated, but what's not debated is that Göbekli Tepe forces us to reconsider what we think we know. Here were our ancestors, more than 11,000 years ago, coming together to create something that serves no obvious practical purpose. These weren't granaries to store food or walls to keep out enemies. These were apparently sacred spaces, gathering places for ritual and ceremony. Before humans had figured out the basics of survival, they were already asking the big questions. Why are we here? What happens when we die? What forces control our world? The animal carvings offer tantalizing clues about what those early humans believed. Vultures appear frequently, which might suggest a death cult or beliefs about the afterlife. Some researchers think the vultures represent the journey of souls to the next world, carrying the spirits of the dead up to the sky. Snakes might symbolize the underworld or transformation, shedding their skin to be reborn. Foxes appear more than any other animal, suggesting they held special significance, perhaps as trickster figures or guides between worlds. The T-shaped pillars themselves seem to represent human figures, with arms carved along the sides and belts around the middle. Were these ancestors? Spirits? Gods? We can only speculate, because these people left no written records. One of the most mysterious aspects of Göbekli Tepe is that it was deliberately buried. Around 8000 BCE, after being used for roughly 2,000 years, the entire complex was intentionally covered with soil and debris. The people didn't abandon it and let nature reclaim it. They actively buried it, preserving it for future generations to discover. The fill material contains thousands of animal bones, broken tools, and other artifacts, suggesting this burial might have been accompanied by feasting and ritual. Why did they do this? Was it a ritual ending? Was there a catastrophe? Did beliefs change? We simply don't know. But this intentional burial is actually why the site is so well preserved today, protected from erosion and weathering for millennia. Only about 5% of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated so far. Ground-penetrating radar surveys show that there are at least 20 stone circles still underground, waiting to reveal their secrets. Each excavation season brings new discoveries and new questions. In 2021, researchers found evidence that the pillars might have been arranged to align with astronomical events, possibly tracking the movements of stars like Sirius or the constellation Orion. Were our ancient ancestors tracking the stars? Building some kind of prehistoric observatory? The possibilities are endless. Göbekli Tepe also raises profound questions about human nature itself. We often think of our hunter-gatherer ancestors as primitive, barely surviving, focused entirely on finding the next meal. But Göbekli Tepe suggests something different. It suggests that even in the harshest conditions, humans have always been driven to create meaning, to gather in community, to build monuments that transcend their individual lives. The urge to create sacred spaces might be as fundamental to human nature as the urge to eat or reproduce. Since Schmidt's groundbreaking work, similar sites have been discovered in the region. Karahan Tepe, located about 40 kilometers away, appears to be even larger than Göbekli Tepe. Excavations there have revealed rooms with pillars carved in the shape of phalluses and a dramatic carved head emerging from the floor, its eyes wide and staring. Another site called Harbitsuvan Tepesi shows similar T-shaped pillars. Together, these sites suggest that southeastern Turkey was a thriving center of ritual activity during the Stone Age, a kind of prehistoric religious district that drew people from across the region, perhaps from hundreds of kilometers away. The discoveries keep coming. In 2023, researchers announced the use of new technologies like LiDAR to map the surrounding landscape, revealing potential pathways and settlement patterns that connected multiple sites. Each year brings new papers, new theories, new debates. Göbekli Tepe has become one of the most important archaeological sites in the world, attracting scholars from dozens of countries and forcing textbooks to be rewritten. What can we learn from these ancient builders? Perhaps the most important lesson is humility. For decades, we assumed we understood the trajectory of human development. We drew neat diagrams showing the progression from hunting to farming to cities to civilization. Göbekli Tepe reminds us that history is messier than our diagrams suggest. Our ancestors were more creative, more spiritual, more capable than we gave them credit for. They were asking questions about the cosmos and building monuments to their beliefs long before they figured out how to grow wheat. Standing at Göbekli Tepe today, looking at those massive carved pillars under the protective shelters that now cover them, you can't help but feel a connection across the millennia. These were people just like us, looking up at the same stars, wondering about the same mysteries. They gathered together, pooled their labor, and built something that would outlast them by thousands of years. In a way, we're still doing the same thing. We're still building monuments, still asking questions, still reaching for something beyond ourselves. Göbekli Tepe isn't just an archaeological site, it's a mirror reflecting back something essential about what it means to be human. 11,000 years ago, before writing, before cities, before almost everything we associate with civilization, our ancestors had already begun the great human project of making meaning from mystery. And that project continues today, every time we wonder about our past, every time we build something greater than ourselves, every time we look at the stars and ask why. The lost civilization older than Egypt isn't really lost anymore. Thanks to that curious shepherd in 1994 and the archaeologists who followed, Göbekli Tepe has emerged from the earth to tell its story. And what a story it is! A story of ambition and mystery, of faith and cooperation, of questions that echo across thousands of years. We may never know exactly what those ancient builders believed. But we know they believed in something big enough to move 20-ton stones. And perhaps that's the most human thing of all.